Okay, we're up. About 1:45, isn't it? Hi everyone, my name's Debbie Ireland, and I'm going to be talking today about metadata and taxonomy management in SharePoint 2010. So just a teeny bit of information about me. I'm a SharePoint trainer. I'm based out of Tauranga. Also organise SharePoint conferences, so for any of you that didn't make it to the one in June, we have another one coming up in next March, I believe it is. And I'm also very active with the user groups around the country. So again, if you're not part of a user group at the moment, MS Communities, www.mscommunities.net.nz is the organisation of about 25 user groups around the country covering all sorts of technologies, SharePoint being one of them. So get involved that way. They meet every month and lots of good ways to learn lots of new knowledge. And I'm an MVP in SharePoint. Okay, what this presentation's about, pretty much I will do a few intro slides just introducing the concepts and terminology, give you a little bit about why it's important, and I know you can't read the writing on that, but wherever you see that little diagram, one thing that really frustrates me with SharePoint is where exactly these things are done when I'm talking about them. So the little bit at the top shows you pretty much what's done at a central administration level. The middle one is what's done at a site collection level, and the bottom one's what's done within the site itself, or maybe by an end user. So I've tried to use that consistently throughout, so even if you just go back through the slides just so you can figure out what bits were done where, hopefully that'll help. Lots of demos, and I'm going to move pretty fast, so let's get started. Maybe? Okay, so the agenda, pretty much I'm just going to work through each one of these and demonstrate to it, so I won't go through the detail because we'll be covering that as we go. I do have at the bottom of each agenda one just these three different areas as to what sort of roles they cover, so whether it's a power user, portal, site administrator or an end user. It's a bit difficult to say exactly which bits come with which one, but I've tried to do that a little bit so you get the feel for who's going to be working with it with each part. Okay, so there's lots and lots of new terms for 2010, and without going through each one of them and describing them in detail, I guess the main ones that I'm going to be demonstrating today are the content type syndication and the managed metadata. But I think when you look at people that have come from 2007 to 2010, then the main challenges that we've faced, or the ones that I think are the most improved and exciting in 2010, are those two things. So number one being the fact that content types are wonderful. We could use them with lists and libraries and all over the place, but we had to then work out a way to deploy them across multiple site collections, and that became quite hard to deploy and to maintain. So that's the first one. Well, it's actually the end of my presentation, but that is the one that I think is a huge, huge, huge advantage with 2010. And then the second one was all about metadata and the fact that, yes, it's been wonderful, we can add metadata to lists and libraries, but often it needed multiple columns to explain exactly what we were doing, and we couldn't have that hierarchical approach. There are third-party tools out there, and I know the ones that I personally have worked with didn't seem to work so well, so this is like a breath of fresh air, that's for sure, to have this just all built into the package. So yeah, those are the two things we're trying to demonstrate today and how they're improved. Okay, so our scenario for today's demonstration, and I am going to work through some of the things that are awfully basic and back to simple SharePoint stuff, but it's sort of building up to the end result of demonstrating exactly how we have that managed metadata and content type syndication. So our scenario is that we've got Molly's Pub, which of course is started in Tauranga. Molly's Pub is actually a real pub, and I think I used to work for it many years ago in Houston and Texas. I'm sure there's more than one, but anyway. So we started with a team site, and we started with one site collection. Nice and simple. I use Mindjet, by the way, to do a whole lot of planning and architecture and so forth, so if anyone wants to know more about that, by all means ask me or get it. It's a great little tool where you can show all the drill down of how your site's architected, and then also down to the very low levels of taxonomy. So I've used a couple of the screenshots from my Mindjet application throughout this presentation. So here's our Molly's site. We've got a documents library, images, contacts list and wine list to start with. I'm about to demonstrate this, I just want to show it. Okay, but the data becomes a little bit unmanageable, so we decide we need a little bit of metadata. We want to be able to improve our workflows, so we're going to add some of that in. and we want to be able to search for the information that we've got in there a lot easier, hence the need for metadata. We'll start off and put some metadata around the documents, which is pretty simple. So a document library, we'll add some metadata fields in. And then because we actually specialise at Molly's and wines, one of my favourite things, we thought we'd start to put a little bit of metadata around our wine list so that we could teach the people that work for Molly's a little bit about the types of wine, the colour, the region and so forth. So we've got a wine list and we've got some metadata around the wine. So just to show how this is demonstrated, and again this is just my way of doing it so that you can see underneath the types of fields and the types of columns and the information that's being kept in there. Obviously not dynamic, but very, very good for the planning stages. So my first demonstration is very simple and just is going to show you, Molly's. I know what I was going to do, not quite. Okay, so this is Molly's home site. You can see I've got a pretty simple announcements list. I've got a good calendar showing me different events that are on at Molly's pub. We've got all sorts of different events. We've got a team discussion. We've got our pub documents library. We've got our metadata in here so I can go ahead and filter on any one little metadata item. And we've got our wine list here. So again, we can see I can go ahead and filter on, hopefully we've got a wine list, different countries that all the wines come in. If I wanted to see all the Pinot Gris, I could go ahead here. Of course, if I had list validation active on this particular list, I could probably put a little bit of list validation in there so I didn't come up with a red Pinot Gris, but anyway. And then, so it's a pretty much basic site, and we've decided, okay, that's great. We can see on our wine list that we did have a whole lot of different fields to describe different things. So the country, the wine region, and so forth had to be individual fields. So I'm just going to jump back in. So that just sets the scene for where it's all at. Okay, so first of all, introducing manage metadata and how we get around that. This is power user and portal site administrator stuff, I guess, as far as who sets it up. And very simple term just to say that it is a hierarchy or collection. I'm not going to go too much into the terminology because it's easier to show it. So what we've done when I showed you the wine list was we had our individual fields, and instead of having 3 separate columns for describing that data, what we find is easier is to have one hierarchical term set. So we've got here a location which breaks it down into country and then into vineyard within that country, within that region. So you can have multiple levels, but the idea being that you're talking about one column rather than 3. All sorts of reasons why we'd use manage metadata. Obviously, the main one being the consistency of terminology so that you've got everyone talking the same language throughout it all. Search results are a whole lot better so that we can return more relevant results. And it is very dynamic, so we can keep SharePoint in sync with the business as it changes. So if there's a new product added, we can add a new product, etc., etc. So what it has within SharePoint is the concept of having a term store management tool, which is where the managed metadata service fits in. And you have a group, which can be like the locations that I showed. You have a term set, and then you have, and you can have multiple term sets, and you can have multiple terms. You can have multiple groups too, sorry. So it allows you to set up many, many different taxonomies for your organisation that everyone can use. Where does all this happen? I'm going to show the managed metadata service a little bit later on just within the content type, so I won't go into the central admin with this first demo, but that is where it's set up initially, is with the managed metadata service. Within the site administration settings, you've got your term store management and you have local and shared. So local is within the one site collection that you're working within, and shared is across multiple site collections. And then within a list and library level, you have your managed metadata columns and your navigation settings. So we'll demonstrate both of those. Okay. So, managed metadata. So we've got all these lists. First of all, I'm going to show you at the settings level. So we'll just go into site settings. And you can see here we have term store management. So I'm at the site collection level here. The site administration level here. And what this is it shows me I've got actually, I really should have deleted the dogs one. I think I was playing with it there. But anyway, I have a location group set up. So this is my group. If I drill down here, this shows my term sets and my terms underneath all those. Within each one, you can see down the right-hand side here that you've got, first big, huge step is you need to have yourself added as a term store administrator. For me to be able to add a new one and see that drop-down arrow, I need to add myself in there. Now, it's a real weird thing because as much as I'm logged on as the administrator and I can see everything else and I can add and delete and so forth myself as an administrator, you have to be in there or it doesn't work. So if you've seen that you can't see that, that's why. So down the right-hand side here, we've got all sorts of, I haven't got this sorted. You've got all sorts of fields that you can see filled in as far as at the top level. When you get down to the actual field level, the term level, you can see that you've got another set of things. So you can have it where it's available for tagging, so you can choose whether or not at that level of your hierarchy, users can actually select that to tag. You can also change the sort on things. So while everything may be applicable to have it all alphabetical, which is obviously going to be the default one, I can go ahead and I can choose a custom sort order. So if I have specific items that I know everyone wants to see come to the top of the list, I can change that sort order. I can also set up a different administrator for the different term sets so that I can have different people that are going to be contacted if there's information and so forth. So most of these are set up, So I can have an owner, for example, of this particular term set, who then you could set up an email address and so forth. So if there were people that wanted to add new things to my term set, they could have it all set up and managed that way. You can see how I talked about global and shared. Local and global. So the local ones are the ones that are set up specifically for the site collection. So the example I've got here is I've got some local Molly's information. So I've got the local pubs that are in Tauranga, Tauranga or the region. So under Tauranga I've got a list of pubs, and under the Mount I've got a list. I can go ahead and I can add in a new one just by going create term. And I'm trying to think of the new pub that I was going to add in. I think there's one called the Zarbar. So that's me, I've added a new one. Or I could go ahead and add in a new level at this level and add in a new term set, which would then give me the new hierarchy. So it's very, very simple to add in new ones and create your managed term sets at this level. Now it becomes relevant that you can see that local Molly's pub info, because when we go into a new site collection, you'll see that you can't. Whereas with the region, because we've made it a global one, it's available for everyone to see. Okay, so that's how it's all set up. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would use that. So I'm just going to go back to Molly's Pub. And first of all, I'm going to add into our wine list, where we had our 3 columns here. I'm going to go to the list settings. And I'm going to create a new column. And I'll call this wine location. And I'm going to make it a manage metadata field. And you'll see down the bottom here that then I have the term sets that I have available for me to use. Now this is showing me the ones within my site collection here, so I can use these individual ones. However, I'm just going to go ahead and choose the location at this level. And I can obviously enter in the other information, but I'm just going to click most of the defaults for the purpose of this. I could set a default if I wanted to. So now that I've got that, let's just try and tag one. So if I go in and I edit one of the existing items here, you can see that I can automatically start typing, and it'll automatically suggest some things that start with BA. So I can go ahead and put in, I know my data's not going to be at all integral here, but anyway. So I can save that. Now the thing I didn't show you is I could have chosen, like any of the other custom columns within SharePoint, I could have chosen for that to be multiple entries. So it would have allowed me, and I can't remember whether I checked that field or not just then, it would have allowed me to put multiple regions in there had I allowed that for the user. So you can set it up as either single or multiple. So you can see then that once you've enabled that, you've got the ability for people to go down and look at the information. Now the other way, so that's an auto-suggest because I happen to know that one, but if I don't, I might just want to go ahead and click on this one here, and I can browse for whatever I want, and it'll show me all of the ones here, so I can go ahead and select them. So in this particular case, it is replacing it because I didn't choose multiple values, but it's a nice hierarchical view on the world. Simple. Okay, so the other place I might choose to use that is you can see, you know how I had a global one set up, so you can imagine that region would be used when I decide to expand mollies into other regions. They would use the same type of metadata, so that makes sense to have that as a global one. For a local one, I might say, oh, well, actually, I want to go to my calendar and I only want to store other events about other pubs in Tauranga and what they've got happening. So what I can do here is I can go into my calendar and I can create a column here and call it other pubs. And I can come down under manage metadata, and you can see that I can choose my local ones. So that's where I would use my local information, my local mollies information, to get a list of all the pubs. And I can go ahead and save that. And that means that I can start to see all of the different, if I go into one, all of the different items from the different pubs if I choose to store them in my, whoops, and there you go, I can go ahead and tag something with that. If I went ahead and tagged it at that level, it would then come up for everything underneath it as well. Okay, so that's showing two uses of how you'd use manage metadata and how to set it up. The next thing I'm going to show you is going to just a couple of final points on that. I think I said about the term store administrator, local and global, and copy versus reuse. I didn't actually show that, but there is the ability to copy a term. So if you want to, you've got it all set up with all the owners and so forth, you can copy it, or you can reuse it, which means that anything that changes in one will be reflected in the original one. And you can see which ones, when you look at them, have been copied or reused. I think you might have noticed the different icon change. Okay, so Taxonomy, enterprise keywords. Probably this sits with the end user from the outset, I guess, because it is something that end users create. Just to explain the difference, they both use the managed metadata service. And the difference being that the managed terms are ones that you set up and you have them all hierarchically presented, whereas the managed keywords are tags or user-generated ones, more for informal taxonomy and again for tagging information for use later on. I have heard a few interesting comments about how different organisations intend to sort of roll out using the keyword thing in order to therefore generate what their managed metadata term sets will be. And I guess that's an interesting concept because it's the users that are telling us then what sort of keywords they most search on. I think the most dangerous point of that personally is probably the fact that everyone has a different interpretation for things. So if you've got managed metadata terms, then you can at least control what those values are and what they actually mean. Sorry, I meant to push that. This is a nice diagram, compliments of James Milne actually. So it sort of shows what you're using and what your level of control is with the scope of what you're doing as to whether it would be, sorry that's white, it should not be, but anyway that says Taxonomy, so that's your very unstructured at that end and you're very structured at that end. So it sort of shows the types of, or the reasons or why you'd use them in different areas. Okay, so you can turn managed keywords into managed term sets, which is a good idea, but as I said, watch for the interpretation. You can prohibit users from adding their own keywords, and you can actually add them yourself, so you can set up some ones for tagging that you might want to do at a top level anyway, or you might just want to limit the permissions on the people who are setting up the keywords. I guess in true let the users be empowered and give you some guidance as to the types of things that they would want to see things tagged with, it's good to keep that as open as possible. And they will be prompted with the auto-suggest thing for ones that are already used. So where does this happen? Site administration, it should have said central administration for the managed metadata service. But at site administration level, you'll see the keywords. I'll show you that in just a second. And then you can go ahead and activate it basically at the list or library settings, and then the end user can add in the ad hoc entries anywhere. Add a list or library. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my Molly's Pub homepage, and I'm going to add in, actually the calendar's probably just as good as any. I'm going to go into the list settings of the calendar, and you'll see here that there's an enterprise metadata and keyword setting. So by going in here and just selecting this, it will automatically add in for me a column. So you'll see down here, there's enterprise keywords and a column. Just to note that if you do want to turn off enterprise keywords, you can't just go back there and untick it. You actually have to go in and just delete the enterprise keywords column, and it'll automatically untick it. So now that I've got that in there, I can go to my calendar and I can open up my event, edit the item, and down the bottom you'll see that there's our other pubs here, but there's enterprise keywords. So I can go ahead and I can put in ones like demo, for example, and it'll come up with a demo. I could put in Deb, because Deb was used once before, or I could go ahead and I could create a new one. So I can say TechEd 2010, and it's not coming up and prompting me, but it will allow me to save it. Now you can use these keywords in a few different ways. You can use it also by using the I like it and tagging options within SharePoint, and you can also use it a lot within tag cloud web parts and so forth. I haven't got too much of that set up to demonstrate. I do have one, I think, on the front page. Okay, so I could go in again and I could add it to the wine list, and I could do exactly the same thing, and just by simply adding an enterprise. What did I just tag it then? There's my tags and notes. That uses the same repository. So I've enabled it there. And if I go back to my wine list and go into one of these wines, you can see that I can put in, TechEd, and it'll automatically come up. So you can, when you're tagging things, you can make them private, but for this, when you use it on list and library, it will come up as an enterprise keyword if that's what it's been set up at. Just to show you what that looks like from a behind the scenes within the site settings, if I go to the term store management tool here again, and I look at under system and under keywords, you'll see those keywords that I was talking about before, and you'll also see if I go down that I will have TechEd 2010 has been added in there. So again, that's where I could add in additional keywords at that level without having to do it through the front end. I could go ahead and add whatever keywords I wanted in there. Or I could go into that part and look at them and say, okay, let's see which ones of those we want to turn into actual managed metadata keywords. Okay? Right. Sorry, I've got the wrong one here. So nice and simple. Next step. So most of you, I'm hoping, and I'm not going to ask questions because it's too hard to define the answers with this many people, but are already using site columns and content types. And if you're not, then I'm hoping this isn't going to be too fast. But if you are, then this is where the real power of the content type syndication comes in. So I'll just run through very quickly content types and how they're being used in the scenario before I jump in and show you how it's going to be used across enterprise-wide. Right, so main reasons to enable looking at different types of data within the same list or library. So the example that I'm going to be showing is using this, but obviously one of the most common ones of using content types is usually within document libraries. Two concepts that we're going to cover: site columns, because you need site columns in order to, and all the content types require site columns, and site content types. So site columns, just a plain old simple column, but it is reused against multiple lists. They're kept in the site column gallery, which is at the site settings level, and they're visible to all sites within that site collection or sub-sites within it. So ideal for standardising on metadata, stops you having the scenarios of having 10 different department columns that all say HR and human resources, etc., etc. Multiple content types, so this just shows you a screenshot if you're using different content types within a library, means that I can have all of these different things. I can have a presentation which gives me different metadata, different workflows and so forth for that particular content type versus other content types within the same library, so that I can sort and filter and slice and dice my information however I want to. So I do have a nice little diagram here, and I have to thank James for this one as well actually. So we have a list, and we have a column that we add to one list. We go ahead and add it to another one, and then we decide we'll add it at site level, hence our site column. We then can add that site column to the individual lists, or we can introduce a concept of content types. And with the content types, we then add the site column into the one content type, and we use those across multiple lists. So quite a nice, easy way of describing it. Oops. Okay, so my example here is I'm going to have a contacts list on my Molly's Pub site because I decide I want to have lots of contacts that I want to record. Now, when I first created my contacts list, it's going to have my generic name, address, email address, etc., etc. And then I thought, well, I actually want to break down and get some more valuable data in there, so I'm going to have suppliers, resources, and entertainment. So I'm not too sure how much of that you can see, but basically it's going to have different metadata fields for each of those content types, with the green ones being the content type field. So where does this happen? We've got the site administration settings where you create the site columns and the site contents. And then at the list and library level, you've got the advanced settings where you first of all allow management of content types. So that's within a list or a library where you actually allow the management of content types. And then where we add the content types in. So let's show you that one. Right, so I'll go to my Molly's Tauranga again. Whoops. Okay, so we've got our contacts list here, which is just a standard out-of-the-box contacts list, but I've decided to add in these different content types. I'm not going to run through creating an individual content type. I think I have to for one of the hub ones, but I'm sort of assuming everyone knows how to do that. I will just look at, at the items list. If I go to create a new item within my contacts list, you'll see that I've got 3 set up here: resources, entertainment, and suppliers, which have those metadata fields that I showed you on the earlier one. If I go to the list settings, just to show you with creating a content type, the process I would have gone through, I go to list settings and then to advanced settings within the list. And here is where I tick the allow management of content types. Remember too, I'm obviously using this demonstration using a list. I could use it with any library also. So I've allowed the management of content types, and once that's been done, I then get this little screen down the bottom here, which shows me the content type. So if you go to any list or library and you haven't enabled that, that's why. And then you can see here how I have various content types that I've created, so I can have a look at them, and they're all kept at this site collection level. So I've done this within Molly's Tauranga site collection level. So I decided to create a resources one, and I added specific fields in, like staff type and hourly rate and commitment and so forth. And that was all good because it all gave me the information that I needed. Okay, so if I just look at one, I can go ahead and edit the item here, and you'll see up the top here that I've got my content types. I've got my resources, entertainment and suppliers, and this one here is set as an entertainment, so it's giving me the medium and the cost. If I was to change this particular contact to a resource one, again it would give me the different information of the staff type, the hourly rate, and whether they're full-time or casual. So all pretty straightforward, hopefully. We will move from there into, so that's just showing you content types as far as what we've set up. Okay, so I'm going to jump into, I'll just double check here. I'm going to jump into why, so all those content types have been set up at Molly's Pub level. So what's happening now is we're going to talk about the content, the hub and site content and content type syndication. So the idea here is that Molly's is expanding. We've got multiple site collections where we're going to need to replicate those same content types across lots of different site collections. So rather than me having to go and set all those content types up every single time again, what I want to do is set them up in one central place and have that feed out to everything. And also, if I go ahead and change any one content type, I want it to be replicated also. So, without going into too much detail, obviously 2007, we said that before. With 2010, what you get is you can nominate a hub. So I can say which site collection I want to be my hub. Now, in the example I've got, someone said, why don't you just use Molly's Tauranga? And I haven't done that on purpose because I want to show how it's going to work, but you could actually choose for any site collection to be a hub. You can have multiple managed metadata services. And the reason for this might be that you want to deploy some taxonomies to some site collections and others to other ones. So you might want to have multiple metadata services. Beware when you set up the content type, when you originally create the hub, you can't change it. You actually have to go and create a new one. So this is where I'll show you a little bit in the managed metadata service and also just a little bit on the timer jobs that are run within there. The site collection administration, I'll show you where it's activated as a feature and then how those content types are published and then how they're consumed from within the site collection. So let's go to our central administration site. You have to excuse my health analyzer. I need Chan to look at it. Let's see, I'm going to go to Managed Service Applications here. So I'm just under Central Administration, Managed Service Applications, and I'm going to jump down to the Managed Metadata Service here. So we've got two things here, one where we've got the connection and one that's going to show you which hub. So if I was to go ahead and create this from brand new, it would be where I would define the hub that's going to be used. I'm just going to let you know that I have a site collection already set up called Molly's HQ, HR for Hub Repository, and that's the one that we're using as our hub in this particular instance. So you'll see that URL, not that you can see it particularly well, but it's got HR on it, being used here. Just one point for anyone who hasn't already been in here, if you click on this, you're going to end up with this screen, which seems to be annoying. So if you want to go in and look at the properties behind anything, actually click on that one and then go onto the properties screen. So this first one, if I was creating a managed metadata service right from scratch, would give me the ability down the bottom here to actually choose the content hub. So you can see that mine's already done there, and you can see I can't change it at this level. So I've set the managed metadata service to use that content hub for my publishing. The other thing is that I've also allowed underneath the connection service here for all of the content types to be consumed from here and the default storage location for keywords and so forth. So you can choose exactly how you want to set that up. Once I've done it at that level, at the central administration level, I can go back in to so we're looking at the hub now, so just at this particular site's being used as a hub repository. I'm going to go into and show two different things here. By the way, this hub repository has to have the publishing infrastructure feature turned on in order for you to work, for it to work. And it also, by making it the hub when I did that initial setup of the managed metadata service, has also activated another feature, which if I look under site collection features here, is called the content type syndication hub, which is where I was saying, well, you could actually make one of your other ones the content type syndication. So it needs to be in those two places, in the managed metadata service and then as one of the features. So those are the things that show me what's happening at a site collection level. I can also, site administration level, sorry. I can also go down here and I can look at content type publishing and I can see what's happening for this particular ones. If any have been subscribed. I'm actually going to show you this on one of the other site collections where we've got it happening, and it will show you which content types have been subscribed and are being published at that point. Okay, so the other thing, what I've done is I decided, so remember with Molly's Pub, we had gone ahead and created all those nice content types, but of course they can only be used within the Tauranga site collection. So what I've done here, and for the sake of time, is I will create one other one very quickly. As I've created some custom content types here. There's a presentation, the resources and the supplier, which were used on the contact list. So exactly the same as what you do with creating a content type anywhere else. We'll create the entertainment one. We'll base it off the no, we won't base it off that. List content types, and we'll base it off the contact list. I'm going to keep it in the custom content type. And you can see I've got here all of the things that come with the contact anyway. I'm going to go ahead and create a new site column, and we'll call this medium, and we'll make it the medium of entertainers, which is things like a band, a quiz, a one-man entertainer, I don't know, anyway, and so forth. And I must have done this before. Let's make it mediums. Thought I'd roll this back. Okay, and I could go ahead and put costs and whatever else I want in, right? Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump across. So I've set my content types up at this level. You can see here that there's something called Manage Publishing for this content type that you won't see if I was back on my Tauranga site. You wouldn't see this one here. So I can manage whether I'm going to publish this, and I can publish the content type because this one hasn't been published before. I can go ahead and publish it. So I can say, okay, I'm going to publish my new content type of entertainment out to everywhere else. So let's now jump in and see how we'd consume those. If we go to the Molly's Auckland site, I've got my new Auckland opening, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a contacts list. And we'll call these the Auckland contacts. And we'll just create it. So I've got my basic contact list here. I'm going to go into list settings and allow the management of content types in this list because I wouldn't be able to add them otherwise. Quickly go in and add from my existing content types. So if I go under my custom content types, you can see entertainment, resources and supplier. I'm actually just going to add resources and supplier in here. I've got an idea that entertainment one might be a duplicate. And then once I've put them into there, away you go, and they're all visible, and I can go back and add in different things on my list, and all my content types are there. So nice and easy, but they have come from the hub. So if I was to look at the site settings on the Auckland site and go down under content type publishing, I should have here a list of which content types are being subscribed from this particular site collection. The other thing I can do is I can actually go in under the shared documents here. I'm just going to show adding another one in. And I can go under library, enable the content types for this particular library. And I'm going to add in just one with a document because I just want to show you that if you are doing it and you've got a template, that it will also flow through. So under content types for this one, I'm going to add from existing ones, go to custom content types and add the presentation in. So once I've done that, and that again has come from my hub, then I can go ahead and go to the documents. I can choose a new presentation and call this TechEd and go OK. And it's going to open up a nice view, a template, and have all of the metadata that has been set up at the other level, not at the, at the content type, the content hub level, not at Molly's Auckland. So I can now use this right across multiple site collections. Does that explain it? Is everyone confused? So far, so good. I can also publish and republish. So let's just jump back into our entertainment one here. So I can look at managing the content type and I can say, okay, I actually want to republish this or whatever. So the reason you'd want to do that is because if you add another thing in. So I want to show you this so that I can show you how the timer jobs work. If I go into site content types, and we'll just go into the presentation one, and here we've got a few different, actually, sorry, wrong one. I'll go into the entertainment one, and you'll see we have mediums down the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and create another one called props, which is another field. So because I've created another field in there, I then need to republish this content type. It won't, however, be visible, because it was republished at that time, it won't be visible within all the different site collections until the timer job runs. So just to show you quickly where those timer jobs are, if I jump back into the into the central administration site, go under monitoring, go under timer jobs. There's two timer jobs that run, one being the content type hub, which another nice thing with 2010, it has a run now button, as long as it does it within the minute that I'm doing it or something like that. And the content type subscriber. So as soon as those have been run, obviously if you've got them scheduled, they're going to do it, but for the purpose of what you're trying to do, if you're wondering why you've gone to your new site collection and it's not showing, that would be the reason why. Okay, so that's really why you'd use content types user hub for them all and then actually publish them out to the various places. Just going to jump back into my presentation here. The last one is using navigation and search, and is really from an end user's perspective of how they would use, how they would see some of the managed metadata term sets from a visual point of view, and I'm really just going to demonstrate this. So the whole idea about creating all this metadata and having it all there available is obviously going to be for how we can better search for it and how we can better find information. So the whole purpose behind keeping it all together is all about discoverability. So this is quite simple. We're going to go through two steps. One, site administration to activate the features, and then at a list or libraries level to actually put some metadata navigation hierarchies onto the page and enable some key filters. Okay, so without reading through that whole slide, because I think I copied the information, but it was navigation hierarchies is the expandable and collapsible hierarchies that you're going to see in order to be able to filter and drill down into information, and key filters is adding in parameters. So I'm just going to show you it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my Molly's Pub site here. And I'm going to go into the wine list where we've added in a couple of things, but not a lot. I'm going to go into the list and the list settings. And what we're looking at here is metadata navigation settings. So it's this one here where I can go in and I can actually choose a whole lot of different things, where what I'm going to choose here is what's going to show up on the left-hand side. So it's an easy way for my users, instead of having to do filters and create hundreds of different views and so forth, that they can have some navigation right there on the page using the metadata that they've got. So I will keep that wine location that I created before, so that was a hierarchy or term set. And then I'll also put in another one just for the sake of it. Let's put in the year. Actually, the year is probably a better filter. Let's put in down the bottom here. I will put it in there. Okay, sorry. The key filters are then the ones that we want to be able to parameter drive some of the information that's in there. So in this particular case, you can do it where it's equal to something. And at the moment, I've got here the colour, the maker, and the year set up in here. So we'll go ahead and just leave that on there. Sorry, I'll take that off, that one. And show you what it looks like. Okay, So what it does is whenever I click on the list that I've put the Manage Metadata, the metadata navigation settings on, is you'll see down the left-hand side here, I've got now two different little web parts showing on the page. I've got wine locations, so I can actually drill down. The only bad thing about this is I guess I get the whole list of all of them, even though the data in my list is not what's necessarily showing in the whole thing. But if I do go ahead and I was to drill down and I happen to know that we'd selected one with Barossa Valley, then I can go like this and it'll actually filter down and give me the information that I've filtered on. So I can do that, which the good thing about that is if I had, and I really should have put some more terms in there, if I wanted to see just Australia, it would give me everything that's then been filtered by Australia at that level and everything below it. So it means that I've got a nice easy way of grouping the information together and being able to display it in one easy shot. The other way for that is that I've got the key filters here, so I can also then filter on one particular filter and further define the information. So this is great for when you've got large lists and libraries and you want to be able to give the users a nice easy way of creating things. And you can do ones depending on the type of field you've got, but obviously if they're dates, they can have date-driven, parameter-driven ranges for date ranges and so forth. And it just makes it, searching for their information and finding it a huge amount easier. Okay, so that was Manage Metadata. I think I've absolutely raced through this presentation and actually finished early, being completely worried about the hour. Okay, so takeaways. The biggest one, I guess, is information architecture. You saw how I was doing some of the planning. And I guess when it comes to managed metadata, actually coming up with what those term sets are and being able to define them and refine them and then make them useful for people to use is probably one of the biggest things. So it is all about taxonomy and coming up with what's going to work. One of the other parts of that, though, is defining how many managed metadata services you're going to have and which ones you're going to have read information from the different term sets that have been created. Also within the site collections, which one you're going to have as a hub, and I do think the idea of having a hub that contains all of them so that everyone can go to the one place is a good one. Again, yeah, which site collections come from which service. The ownership of the term sets. I think you'll get to the stage where different term sets are being created per division, so therefore you can put some quite easy definitions around the term sets that are being created. For example, HR would create all the terms to do with that. But making it easy also for the users to understand what those terms mean and the thesaurus behind them. And then, of course, coming into that is how you're going to plan for your content types and site columns. So while a lot of that has been made easier in 2010 and how it is easier to deploy that, I think the same problems of information architecture and the planning of all that taxonomy and metadata management is still as hard as it ever was. So it probably just needs slightly more planning, but at a more centralised level. Okay, so more cool stuff. I said about the SharePoint conference and the user groups and training. So we do a bit of training too. So I think that's all. So I do actually have some time for questions if anyone wants to ask any questions. Yes? Sorry, I didn't quite get that. I would have to check. Do you know that?
Do you mean you want to install SharePoint as a server with SharePoint and then use the metadata switch on push in? The DFS has a SharePoint component. Yes, if your DFS instance uses SharePoint again, then you can consume from the entire part.
Yeah, sorry. Yep. You can use external lists. You mean with your external list with the manage? Oh, yes, because you could just add it in as a column to your external list. So you bring your external list with data through, and then you create a manage metadata column within. Yep. Yes.
What about adding extra fields into the term sets? So each term.
Just like I did, you mean? Oh, describing it like it's more of a thesaurus thing? Yeah, there was that question, and there was the one about auditability, which is more around changes that have been made to the different terms. And I don't think it's possible. If someone else can answer that, that would be great. Meaning that you're saying that, so on the left-hand side, I've just set up a new term, and down that side I could define who my site administrator, who my owner. Yeah, synonyms and not that I know of. If anyone else can help out with that one, go for it. Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah.